I might be drafting from my phone.
No worries, no worries. We're good. So anyhow, we are officially live here on Roster Locked, a best ball show, episode 3. My name is Zach Kruger. I am here with James Brimacombe of FootballGuys.com. Just in case you didn't hear when we opened the show, he might be drafting from his phone, which is totally cool. I'm sure he has done more than enough drafts to be able to take it to us, whether on PC or on the phone. You can find James' rankings over at FootballGuys.com, along with some articles, which he said he'll have coming in the next few weeks or so. James, how are you doing? Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks, Zach. I always love talking best ball, and yeah, I love talking with you on Twitter and just the whole community. So yeah, it's great conversations. Underdog is kind of taken over fantasy Twitter, it feels like.
Yeah, this 2021 has definitely been the year of Underdog, which is where we're going to be drafting tonight in the $25 Best Ball Mania 2 draft. Part of my goal for this month, as my first month as a collaborator with Underdog, is to do a month full of roster lock shows with strictly Underdog drafts in the Best Ball Mania 2 lobbies. So we're going to get into one of those in a little bit, but the thing is these drafts go by so quickly that it's a little bit tricky to get in some conversation while also making picks and trying to do the balance the two. So I have James on here. A couple things I want to talk about with James. That he just, if in case you're not familiar, he's an absolute titan in the Underdog best ball lobbies. He has done over 1,000 drafts prior to the NFL draft. I think I was actually in his 1,000th draft, or he was in mine, whichever one it was. And I was just like, this guy, he hammers them out. And I kind of wanted to talk to James a little bit about that. Maybe get into his rankings a bit, but just talk about how he does what he does, because it's rather impressive, and he really cranks them out. I think it's a pretty neat the way that he's been tackling these things. So James, explain to us how you go about being a high volume drafter, because 1,000 drafts just sounds impossible to anyone who's listening on the surface. How can you walk us through what you do, how you do it, and make this thing work?
Yeah, so just a little context on that. I have a lot of help. There's a lot of tools. Just fantasy football has always been, the draft has been the most important thing to me. I just enjoy it. So that's why I fell in love with best ball, because you can really just draft anytime, anywhere. It's on your fingertips and your phone. So they've made it so easy and just so enjoyable. So I really love the format. And as far as high volume goes, it's not as difficult as people think. Obviously, it takes time. And yeah, you say over 1,000 drafts. So there's a little bit of reason why I do that before the NFL draft. There's a lot of shift in ADP as soon as the draft is over. People tend to wait until after the NFL draft before they dive into fantasy season. So I like to, even right after a Super Bowl is over, I'm trying to get any edges that I can. So I like to figure out who's going to be free agents, and where they could fall in drafts, so you can get a lot of good deals, values at ADP on those free agents and those few months before free agency. As far as rookies go, it's a little bit more of a guessing game, but there's definitely a lot of values there as well. Then once all the draft Twitter gets going, you see people's favorites, and those rookies' ADPs will rise.
Exactly.
So it's just up and down. I'm looking at exposures. The reason I do so many drafts is, I guess by day I'm an accountant, so I love spreadsheets. I love looking at numbers, and this is a way for me to really look at players' numbers and what players I like, and the ownership. I like to kind of play with it. I'll look at it every few days. Oh, I'm pretty high on this player, but this player I'm 5% lower on, and I see that they're probably going to end around the same in the fantasy season. So I kind of want to flip flop them in my rankings. So it's all kind of a numbers game to me. I like to look at that portfolio more than anything, and that's the most fun to me. So the draft, and then my player ownership is, and all that stuff is so easy with Underdog, and that's kind of where I've put my flag down, and I keep drafting over there. So
sure, no, that's totally cool. You talked a little bit about player values. Who is a player, if you can remember off the top of your head, preseason, or I guess pre-NFL draft, who you just had a lot of, who either burnt you or who you were you were correct on and drafting them at the volume that you were drafting prior to the NFL draft or even free agency. Like I can tell you, I got burnt on AJ Dillon at his early season ADP before Aaron Jones returned. Like that sucked.
Yeah, no, everybody was on that one, right? That seemed like a freebie almost. I mean, everyone was shocked that Jones re-signed. So I'm just pulling up my 12 man drafts before the NFL draft itself. My top players, my number one overall was Trevor Lawrence at 26%. I had Tyler Boyd, so before the Chase news, he was 25%. So those are a few. Zach Moss, but I'm also a Utah fan, so I live in Utah. So okay. I'm all on Zach Moss. I still think he's probably 2, 3, 4 rounds too cheap right now at ADP, while others are taking Chase Edmonds and Gaskin and any San Fran running back. There's like seven of those.
Yeah.
But I just think Zach Moss, I get like the Josh Allen steals all the touchdowns. I just don't. Josh Allen's turning into a star, right? So they're not going to want him to. People are going to get onto him, and they're not going to want him. Buffalo, they're not going to want him to get hurt. He's like the franchise. So I can see those numbers shifting. I can see some of those Buffalo running backs actually getting rushing touchdowns. I don't know how many, but I just think that there's crazy value in Zach Moss right now. Some other ones I have. So I think a lot of those quarterbacks after quarterback 15-ish, I think they're great values, especially for best ball. So let me go back, and there's two kinds of best ball, right? So now we're going to draft best ball mania here in a minute. So that's about 10% of what I want to do is those tournaments. But most of my best ball, when we're talking 1,000, this is 3-man drafts, this is 10-man drafts, this is 12-man drafts. I mix and match, and I back to the DFS lingo. Those are my cash games. Yeah. Compared to GPPs or how you want to call them. Yeah. So I'm looking at more 3 quarterback builds for my best ball team. So that's why I really like all those values at quarterback. I think you can wait, and then you're getting great values. And even on the tournaments, I go 50-50. 50% of the time I'm going 3 quarterbacks, and the other 50% 2 quarterbacks. So I'm trying to look at some other players. I was high on Phillip Lindsay. I think all those teams, like the Texans, the Lions, what other bad teams are out there? But those are the teams people make fun of. Nobody wants those players.
No, I mean, I even think kind of, if you want to go off the make fun of thing, even though I don't think they necessarily think they're an awful team, they're by no means a good team, but even something like the ridiculous contract that the Raiders gave Kenyon Drake, like I think that Kenyon Drake and Josh Jacobs are almost like the light version of Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb in 2021. I think that there's a very good chance that in anything that's either half PPR or full PPR, I think that Kenyon Drake at his ADP, he's kind of like almost treated like a meme running back because of the stupid contract that they gave him out in Vegas. But he really is kind of a player who has displayed both an ability to run, fairly efficiently, or maybe effectively is the right word. And then he can also catch passes. And if there really is a plan to actually get him the ball, whenever it's negative game script or whenever they, a third down, I think that Kenyon Drake could actually be a pretty good value. So I've been scooping up Drake wherever I can get him, kind of, because he's not really a price that's going to hurt you as much as he's probably going to help you at this stage in the game.
No, I love that. Yeah, and another guy like that, Damian Harris, like he's another guy I love. So I think David Montgomery, people are still like letting his ADP fall. Like I think he's an awesome running back 2 or running back 3 for a best ball team. So I like scooping him up. As far as wide receivers, my top receivers were Tyler Boyd, Marquise Brown, Devontae Parker, Corey Davis, Devontae Smith, like those kind of players, Deebo Samuel. So those middle round receivers, I guess once you hit about around 7, 8, 9. Like you can really build a nice best ball team with those type of receivers.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. James, before we get into the draft here, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about going to some of these tools that Underdog actually offers when it comes to doing the, drafting at the high rate that you do, because you had to talk to me about how, you arrange your own rankings on here. You also set your limits. I think that this is stuff that a lot of people who maybe draft on Underdog aren't aware that they even exist, or if they do exist, maybe they don't know how to use them or they don't feel comfortable using these tools. I can tell you, I personally have never used these. I don't even actually adjust my rankings on Underdog. I kind of just have an idea of who I want when I want them. So it's an interesting tab to play around with. If you don't mind, I'm going to pull this up here real quick. I'm going to share my screen because I opened this up. Actually, I just have to add to the stream here. So in here, what James was talking to me about off screen was how you can preset your rankings and you can set your limits to the number of players you draft. So basically, if you get into a draft, but either you can't draft or maybe you just have your rankings and your limits set so well that you don't have to worry about drafting, because over time, to some degree, variance is going to take over and you're going to get the builds that you need that are going to, they're going to cash, they're going to hit for you, even if you're not necessarily drafting these teams after you get in the lobby. So James, can you just kind of run us through these tools a little bit? Let's just touch on it and see what these look like, how we can move things around, and then I'm going to get us into a best ball draft here, into one of these best ball manias. And you don't have to worry about drafting from your phone because we're actually going to be looking at my screen and we're just going to draft this team together. If that's cool with you.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah,
cool. Good deal.
So I think the first step, anybody starting on Underdog, is right here, the rankings tab. You can go through, do all your rankings. I think that's valuable. I get what you're saying about, you kind of know the players you like. What I like to do, in those later rounds, I like to chunk like 5 quarterbacks together that I like and kind of all the same, or tight end, or those kind of positions. And then when I'm in the draft, I can kind of see once 3 or 4 of those are gone, I need to grab that 5th one. So that's a little trick I do in my rankings. As far as position limits, that's the most valuable thing that you can do on Underdog. So I like to just put it as maximum 5 or 3, where it says 5 there.
Yep.
Then I like to go running backs. I go 6, and then I go 7 on my receivers, and then tight end position that I hate, I'll go 2.
2. Gotcha.
Yeah, but you can play around this. You'd rather have a 2 quarterback build, put 2 there. You want more. It's like most people aren't going to want 6 running backs. So I'm talking this is kind of my cash roster construction.
Yeah.
So, the 3, 6, 7, 2. That's kind of how I build. But you don't want to be the guy in the draft that has something you got to tend to your kid, and next thing you know, you have 5 quarterbacks drafted, or 5 tight ends. Like you just wasted $25.
Yeah, and hopefully that's not happening as much in the best ball mania drafts as it does the like you're calling it, the cash games. I've definitely been in a couple Underdog lobbies drafting late at night. Maybe the room takes a little bit long to fill, and then someone hops in and it finally fills, and you're just watching this one team just start the draft with like 7 wide receivers or like 6 running backs right out the gate. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, I even had one team that I saw where someone drafted, I think, 1 tight end, and they were basically it was like the way the board was unfolding. Tight ends kept on not being at the top of the board, and it was just drafting in the order of their rankings. And then finally, by default, it picked the 1 tight end at the very last round. So if you're not going to be around, definitely having these rankings set and understanding how position limits work will be a great way to make sure that you're not getting burnt in the event that you auto draft. And also, it's a good tool to have if you do want to kind of do a strategy where you are just getting into lobbies and you're setting your rankings and your limits so well that you're able to have these teams kind of draft themselves, and you realize that over time you're going to have ideal roster builds. Let me real quick get into a draft, and then we can touch on this just a little bit more here, if that's cool.
So you don't want me to jump in too? Do you want both of us in?
Oh, we're going to draft a team here ourselves. I want to get the brains of the operation in here, and I want to construct one with you, man. So we're gonna build this thing up here. We're going to be checking it out, and we got 4 people in here, so we're kind of good to go. We can talk about it a little bit more. What were you going to say though?
Oh, can I jump in too? Just because I think my rankings, like you're not going to be jumping in with my rankings, or do you want to jump out and then me to draft the team? Just because, like, if you don't have rankings set, mine are going to be so.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to, you can. The idea is to kind of draft the team and chat on it. I'm not going to be able to upload your rankings. You are right with that. But I mean, if you want to draft against me, we can just kind of roll and we can discuss our picks as we're making them. Like, that's cool.
Yeah, let's do that.
All right.
I need another draft in my portfolio.
No problem. Yeah, we can go ahead and do this, and then all you have to do is promise that you won't be peeping my queue, because I'm going to be sharing the screen no matter what. So you can't rob me, James, if you like someone who I'm about to take. You just have to accept the fact that I've already queued him up.
No, that's cool.
No, I'm just messing with you. But
I was going to go back to your to the rankings tab and then to the limits. So just make sure that equals 18. So that's kind of how you want to do that, roster limits. So
yeah,
just get that to 18. And then you're just talking about the queue there. I say, so once you get in the draft, that's the most important thing next to setting your limits, I kind of think. And then as far as going back to those limits and rankings, I don't know if anyone wants to try this. If you have, say, you got $15 to burn or just kind of play around with, enter 3 fast drafts or enter 5 fast drafts, like 8 o'clock at night, and have your limits set and your rankings and everything. And then just wake up the next morning and look at those 5 teams. So it's kind of, it's kind of interesting to kind of see how everyone falls. So I do that a lot, actually. So
I think I'd be nervous to do it. I'd have to feel very confident in my rankings, I think, to just kind of fall asleep and trust that it's going to work out the way that I want it to. I think my biggest concern would be that I don't have my rankings set in such a way where now all of a sudden I'm just taking players at like ridiculous ADPs because of something else filling. Like, I worry that I might have a couple really awful looking teams early on before I get that thing right. But it is an interesting concept. And then do you also do this? Because I know you do also 3-team leagues, and is it 6-team leagues, I think, as well?
I don't do the 6 very often, but the 3 team are probably the most profitable. You can go back on some podcasts from Justin Herzig at Established a Run. He's talked about that back in the draft days. I think he did like 30,000 of them, or actually maybe last year. I think it was draft. The last year of draft, he did 30,000 drafts, and I actually remember a point, like I was in all of them, like a bunch of the lower dollar ones with him.
Yeah.
And I had to reach out to him. It's like, dude, when are you going to take a break? And then I could do a few, but
yeah.
So I think his name was 4-Leaf Clover. I don't know if anybody, or something like that back in the day. I don't know if people remember that, but yeah, he's the sharpest, obviously. And yeah, he has 200K to show for it last year, right?
Yeah. I think, if I'm not mistaken, I had listened to an ETR podcast about maybe a month or so ago where he was kind of going over some of that. So I think we're remembering the same thing, and it really was just kind of crazy to hear how he did all that. And I mean, again, even just you drafting at the capacity you are, like, I hope to one day reach that point. I haven't yet, and we'll see what happens. Maybe 2022 will be my year, but for now, I'm just kind of hitting them when I can and making this thing happen. But we're currently 3 picks out from getting this Best Ball Mania 2 draft started. Maybe I should tweet it out. That might be nice. I'm not even sure if I know how to tweet it out, to be honest with you.
Hey, you probably got about 3 more minutes, so it might fill.
Yeah, we'll see here. Let me just send a quick tweet out here, and we're gonna try to get this thing filled, and then I'm going to be going head-to-head with James in this draft here, so we'll see how it all unfolds. Hopefully he leaves a little bit of something on the table for me to have when this draft is all said and done. Let me put this tweet here, and then we'll get ready to roll.
Well, I might donate to this one, so I might do some kind of weird roster build. Who knows?
Yeah, and that's the one thing that I think is also fun with kind of doing these tournaments, is that because you have to tackle them kind of even in a different way than you would maybe like one of the cash games, I think that it does open you up to really kind of draft a team that when you run back and look at it, you're like, this is kind of a crazy build. Like, I I don't think I would have done this if I wasn't in a tournament, but because you are in a tournament, now you're kind of maybe deviating from the norm just a little bit to set yourself up for what you hope is an ideal situation to, make the playoffs and advance into the championship round of the tournament.
Now it looks like we got 2 more to go. Yeah, just another part in this Best Ball Mania. I think people often don't read the rules, so the excitement, $1 million prize, boom, I'm in. So they don't even think about it. But I think first thing you should do is read the rules. So first round, you can be a top 2 team, so you don't have to just win your league. You can sneak into the playoffs with the 2 seed, right, in your league. So I think that is, you're not just throwing away $25 right off the bat. I think there's a little bit of edge. You're going to get some of that money back regardless of how far you go in the tournament. So I really like that angle. And round 2, there's 18. You're grouped in with 18 teams, and then it's top 2 again. So as you go on, it keeps getting harder. So
right. Yeah, I forget how many people are in the final round, but obviously that's where you're going to have like the biggest challenges in week 17 here. So that's the other thing you got to remember too. And I remember they were talking about a couple things here. One thing where the NFL week does not set up great for fantasy purposes, I believe, is the bye weeks. Now, for this tournament, it looks like it's okay because we're not getting week 13 buys. But if I'm not mistaken, I think week 13 and week 14, some of those weeks we lose some pretty crucial players, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, so week 13, you got Green Bay, Carolina, Cleveland, Tennessee on bye, and then week 14, you got the Eagles, Dolphins, Patriots, and Colts.
Yeah. So at least that's probably going to be more likely to affect your seasonal, your redraft, maybe even your regular best ball leagues. But as far as this tournament goes, you kind of get through the qualifying rounds you see here, weeks 1 through 14. At least when the quarterfinals hit, the buys, I believe, are over by week 15. So you got 15, 16, and 17, where you can really kind of hopefully have pretty full rosters and just get your way through the tournament. Real quick, for anybody who maybe isn't familiar with Underdog or who hasn't drafted here yet, by the way, if you haven't, you can go to my YouTube channel or the RotoViz YouTube channel. I did put a link to draft or to download the Underdog app on the show description along with promo code Krugs. You can use that when you sign up. But if you've not drafted on Underdog yet, just real quick, we'll go over the scoring as this draft gets ready to fill. We have half PPR, receiving touchdowns across the board are 6 points, with the exception of passing touchdowns. Those are 4 points. Receiving yards and rushing yards are each 0.1 per yard, with passing yards being 0.04 per yard. Interceptions are -1, 2-point conversions are obviously 2, and then fumbles lost are -2. The roster constructions for these tournaments and for any best ball format really on Underdog is 1 quarterback, 2 running backs, 3 receivers, a tight end, a flex, and then 10 bench spots. In total, you're doing an 18-round draft, and these drafts do not consist of kickers or defense. So obviously, that's kind of a big thing in the fantasy world these days. A lot of people aren't wanting to draft with kickers and defense now. You can get that on other platforms. Underdog just doesn't have it. I personally like it. I like not having to worry about doing defenses and kickers in our drafts. But if you haven't done so yet, download the Underdog app. Get on there. You can use promo code Krugs when you sign up. I have the link in the YouTube show description. The Best Ball Mania is $25 entry. And then if you're looking for something a little bit lower stakes here, we'll show you these real quick. Underdog offers all kinds of different things. You got 12-team leagues. You got 3-person leagues. You can do drafts for as little as $3 a draft. You got $5, $10 drafts as well, up to $100 a draft. And then in addition to that, Underdog also offers a pick'em option, which is actually really cool as well. I know James does a little bit of pick'em. What are you focused on with pick'em? Do you cover all the sports right now? Obviously, it's not football season, but I've seen you post some NHL stuff.
So yeah, DFS it's been fun over the years, right? But it's pretty tough crowd right now. So I've played around with the pick'ems over the last month or so. I like doing NHL. I probably should have stopped a couple days ago. NHL, NBA basically means nothing right now as far as until the playoffs come, right? Everyone's resting, but I couldn't help myself the last few days. But yeah, I've been profitable in those pick'ems. They're a lot of fun. It's similar to DFS. So you're kind of, you can pick 2 players. You can pick 3, 4, 5, up to 2 to 5 for prop bets. And it's usually, I'm playing the NHL. I like the goalie props. Goalie has to get 24.5 saves over or under. Mm-hmm. So I like doing research on that. I grew up in Toronto, Canada, so I'm a huge hockey guy. That's my first love.
Okay.
I've lived here in the States now for 20-something years, so I've really enjoyed. Now it's just football, right? American football.
Yeah, exactly. What who's your hockey team? Not that I'm a big hockey guy, but I guess if you twist my arm, I'd probably say the Capitals.
The Leafs, yeah. So my 10-year-old son is a huge Bruins fan, so it's kind of fights at our house.
I actually remember when I first got in. Like, I feel like every time I've gotten into a sport over the course of my life growing up, I always kind of got into a sport around playoff time. So I remember when I first started watching hockey, I will not be able to remember the year at all, but I can remember some of the players, because I believe it was when the Leafs were playing the Carolina Hurricanes in the Stanley Cup Finals a few years ago, if that sounds familiar. And there was like Gary Roberts, Matt Sundin, Ty Domi, and they were just like these players who I love watching. They were my team for a little while until I kind of pledged my allegiances, I guess, to the DMV area. But
it definitely wasn't the Leafs in the finals, because they haven't been in the Stanley Cup in a long time.
Okay, so it may have just been the playoffs, if I remember correctly.
It was probably like the conference finals or something.
Yeah. I probably showed my lack of hockey acumen. They're probably in the same like conference or something, right? Like, there's no way they could possibly even meet in the finals.
Yeah. Well, this is the year. This is the year for the Leafs. So
yeah. All right, guys, we just got into this draft here. I am picking out of the 104. It looks like James is picking out of the 109. For those of you who don't know, in case you ever want to check out James and see if you're ever in a lobby with him, he is Eagles with 3 Z's after the name. So anytime you see someone in one of your drafts there, you know that's James. You will probably see him in there a lot. I know that just over the course of this year, I have seen a lot of James in the best ball lobbies. And I don't know that I knew it was him at first, and then we just kind of started interacting online on Twitter a little bit. And super cool guy. Definitely give him a follow if you don't. His name is James Brimacombe, and his Twitter handle is just @ and then his first and last name, like you see it spelled out there on the board. But I'm looking here at the 104. Obviously, again, this is a tournament, and there's a handful of players who I'm looking at this range. As a 0 RB guy, this isn't where I'm normally picking, but I'm probably going to go with Alvin Kamara here. Saints position players have been one of my more preferred position players to kind of target so far this year. James, looking at your rankings real quick, just because I have them here. You got Alvin Kamara ranked 5th, and then you have Ezekiel Elliott and Jonathan Taylor ranked 7th. So I guess you probably think I should have gone Barkley there instead of Kamara.
There's a lot of questions on Barkley, but yeah, it's hard. I almost want to put Zeke at like number 4, to be honest. So
yeah, that would be super contrarian in terms of the way the crowd's kind of viewing Zeke these days. But I don't think that anyone would actually think that you're crazy for doing that. It's not like Zeke was terrible given what he was working with last year. He just, he didn't return, what we hoped he would, and obviously that's going to leave a bad taste in people's mouths. But I don't think that Zeke is going to be a bad pick this year. He's just not someone who I had a lot of as of late.
Yeah, so back about a month, 2 months ago, you get him in like the middle of the 2nd round, which is kind of crazy. So yeah, I went with Zeke there. I just think the Cowboys. I mean, I'm an Eagles fan, so I hate the Cowboys, but you don't hate anybody in fantasy. That's the way it goes. But yeah, Zeke is. I think he's solid. I think you get Dak back. I mean, that offense is just going to move the ball so easily. Their defense isn't great, so there's just going to be a ton of points. I could see Cooper and Lamb getting the ball down to the goal line, and Zeke could end the year with the most touchdowns for running back. I get the Pollard. People love Pollard, but man, they gave Zeke so much money, so just run him into the ground. Like, this could be the year for the Cowboys. So.
Yeah, I think too, like when you're really just talking about the Cowboys offense as a whole, like you have some, ridiculous offensive talent, and you have a defense that, unless they completely fix it in the draft, which obviously time will tell, you've got a defense that could be giving up a lot of scores. I could see the Cowboys leading the league in points just as easily as I could see them leading the league in points allowed. So to get those offensive pieces in a draft, particularly even in a tournament like this, where you're really just trying to get the most upside that you can, dropping in Dallas Cowboys players along the way is definitely a good move. Obviously, Zeke's going to be the one that's going to be the highest price, but between Amari Cooper, CeeDee Lamb, Michael Gallup, even like those players are spread out across the boards a little bit. I think Lamb and Cooper are close to back-to-back, so you're probably not landing both of those. But even one of them with maybe Dak and then Tony Pollard later and Gallup isn't a bad pick. Who are you eyeing as we come up here on you again, James? Just a couple picks.
I'll probably go receiver. Probably go Diggs, Adams, or AJ Brown, or Hopkins maybe too. But
yeah, you're definitely going to get one of them here. It's it's kind of crazy to see how Adams has fallen lately. Obviously, we understand why, but I don't see a world where Devontae Adams is just simply not going to be a good player, even if Aaron Rodgers isn't there. I know that it's been a while since we've seen him without Rodgers, but he was productive a few years ago without him. I think that there's a good chance that we could still see Adams be, a solid wide receiver one, even if he's not the wide receiver one. And now his ADP doesn't even require you to take him as the wide receiver one.
You get him in the middle of the second round. That's one of the better picks, I think, right now. People are picking AJ Brown because they think he's just going to catch 17 passes a game, right? Because there's nobody else in Tennessee. But in the end, Tennessee could be a bad team, so we just don't know.
Yeah, and I think too, obviously they're with a new offensive coordinator now, but I think too that you have to kind of consider, whether or not they'll be running the ball as much this year as they did last year. Derrick Henry's another year older. They don't have a lot of receiving talent, which kind of suggests that they will in fact be sticking to establishing the run over the course of the season. But there could be a lot of targets to go around for AJ Brown. He's one of those guys who I think, even if they're throwing at a lower rate, he could be looking at a 30% target share. And, even though the targets may be minimal, when he's getting 30% of, 450, 500 targets, you're going to find a way to get there one way or another. So I could easily see AJ Brown having a lot of targets, in that offense, or at least a very good target share, possibly the highest target share of any player in the league this year.
Well, it's trending that way with ADP. I think he's going to be the wide receiver one here soon, right? Tyreek Hill and then maybe him. That's the way it's going. Yeah,
I think that there will be an interesting conversation to be had for that down the road. I think also that, if anything, we could be questioning later on down the line whether or not it was a correct move and moving up AJ Brown as high as we did, when we realize that there's a good chance that the targets may not be as high as we want them to be, if you know what I'm saying. Like,
right.
Tennessee could obviously run the ball a lot, and AJ Brown could have a lot of targets, but if they're still going to spread the ball around even a little bit in that high volume rushing attack, it could be kind of tough. So this is where I kind of start taking my tournament approach to this. I like Calvin Ridley, but he's probably not making it back to me right now. And I think Michael Thomas is going way too low at his ADP right now. This is a guy who was a first-round wide receiver just last year, and some bad luck, some injuries kind of derailed him, and his poor 2020 season is leaving a sour taste in people's mouth. Are you as low on Michael Thomas as consensus right now, James? Do you think there's a chance he could still be a wide receiver one? Is there a chance he could be the wide receiver one?
He's going to be top 10 wide receiver, I would say. I don't know if I put him in wide receiver 5 range, but I think in third round it's very good value right now.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
I think all these guys. I think you're talking ADPs off just slightly. So I think you can take any of them, even if the ADP is like 10 spots different. I don't think it's a big deal.
Yeah, like Michael Thomas, I view as a guy who should probably be going in the second round. So getting him in the third round is never going to be like a bad deal for me.
Yeah, see, I wanted Robinson there, but I'm all right with Dobbins. People are starting to let Dobbins slip a little bit. starting to let Miles Sanders slip a little bit. So it's kind of interesting, those guys going in the third round. I kind of like those kind of running backs. I'm looking at the draft. So
For sure.
But I don't follow Michael Thomas over Ridley or Robinson. I think you can mix and match those.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I think you absolutely can. And you just got Dobbins there. When you're doing these tournaments, how aggressively are you chasing the hyper fragile running back build and then building around maybe possibly four or five running backs compared to how you might be drafting in a cash game?
It's all the rage, right? Everybody
Right.
wants to do that right now. So I don't know. I still am undecided on it. So
Yeah.
I get it. I get where all the numbers lead, but now it's just everybody's doing it. I don't know. I kind of like to be a little bit different because that allows you to kind of get some values later on. So here I'm going to go with my second receiver.
You want to talk about doing something different? You and I talked a little bit about doing something different a while back. You did it. I did not, but I promise I will. You talked about doing a draft where you did 4 quarterbacks with your last 4 picks, which obviously goes against a lot of the prevailing knowledge on how to go about building these teams. How many of those teams do you think you did, and how did you like how they ended up? If you don't necessarily have to recall exactly their builds off the top of your head, but what did you think about it as you were doing some of those?
So I think I did 3 of them just in this tournament, just for fun and just for people to yell at me on Twitter, I guess. But I mean, the RotoViz, your tools, they totally against that. Do not draft 4 quarterbacks. You will just lose, right? But also, I don't think it's the numbers where it's showing you draft a quarterback round 15, 16, 17, 18. So I don't think people are thinking that out when they're drafting 4 quarterbacks. So my reason for that was more, I can get 7 receivers that are going to contribute from day one, and I can build a nice team with those receivers. I'm going to get 3 better receivers to score each week for me than some of my opponents that are taking round 15, 16, 17, 18, all these flyers hoping they hit, but maybe only 2 of those flyers hit, whereas my 4 quarterbacks, potentially all 4 could play 16 games or 17 games in the season and give you. So I need 20, 25 points from that position. So my thinking was, I have 4 shots at it. Maybe one of those late quarterbacks breaks out and has a huge year. You could get Roethlisberger as in round 15. People are a little bit down on him. Just that playoff game was miserable for him. But that's where you look for those type of players. They have one bad game. People remember that. Or they had a couple bad games. People remember that. So you're getting crazy value in these drafts with those players. Roethlisberger still has, I don't think there's a better 3 wide receivers on a team, on any team. And then he has a running back. So if he, obviously there's a risk that he could get hurt, but I just think that's crazy value for round 15. He's gonna be in shootouts, so you're gonna get 4 or 5 games where he's scoring you close to 30 points.
Right. Yeah, I'm gonna pull this up here in a second. Let me grab my other receiver here. But if you just talk about these rounds, I'm horrible at doing math in my head. Luckily, we have an accountant here with us. What's the round if you're just dive bombing quarterback until what would be the 15, 16, 17, 18? What's that ADP around? That's like 150, 160 range.
Yeah. So, and another thing to think about with this ADP, right? So when you're drafting these best ball manias, that ADP is for all of the drafts, I believe. It's not just for best ball mania ADP, I don't believe.
Right. I think you're correct on that.
Yeah, so a lot of that's kind of going to be skewed in the way you look at it. So here I have the choice between Deontay Johnson, Brandon Ayuk. So a little trick here. I already have receivers on buys 7 and 9. So Deontay Johnson has a buy on 7. So I'm going to go with Ayuk. And I feel like as a wide receiver 3 has a little bit of upside. People are high on the 49ers offense in general. So that's kind of how I go with that pick.
I'll be honest. This is the first draft I've done since the schedule got announced, and I've just been ignoring ADP bye weeks for so long that I was in autopilot mode until you just mentioned that we have to. Until you mentioned we have to be keeping an eye out for that. So I'm glad that you said that, because I think I would have just been going through this draft and I don't know what it would have looked like in terms of player ADP. I think I would have in terms of player bye weeks, there's a good chance I would have just had a disaster of a build where I wasn't considering bye weeks at all. So thanks for mentioning that, but also a good pro tip either way.
I don't think it matters too much, but your top, probably the first 6, 7, 8 rounds, your top players you want to be careful with when it comes to that. See, but here now, it's my pick again. Deontay Johnson's back on the board, so I'm going to just take him.
Yeah, I think that would have been my pick too, at your spot or at my spot. I think Johnson's I think he's being very undervalued right now. I think he catches a bad rap from all the drops that he had last season. I believe he led the league in drops, but honestly, if you look back at wide receivers who have led the league in drops over the years, like, drops are nothing more than something that's basically annoying. And yes, they're going to cost you fantasy points from time to time. But usually if you're leading the league in drops, there's probably a reason, and that's probably because you're also close to leading the league in targets. And I just don't think that Deontay Johnson's ADP is at all accurately reflecting what he's capable of doing, assuming that he remains one of the key wide receivers in Pittsburgh's offense, which is expected to be the case in 2021. There's not been any reason to believe that Deontay Johnson is not going to be Ben's number 1 target next season. Here we are.
Wow, Trey Sermon at 6'8" is crazy to me.
Yeah, that is interesting. I'm actually going to. Well, you know what? I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do this. I'm going to go with DJ Chark. I like getting my wide receivers early. I obviously feel confident in Kamara. I have some decent draft capital invested in him already. So the Saints stack is looking nice. So getting wide receivers is definitely kind of my goal early on whenever I'm getting those running backs where I'm getting them. As far as James Robinson goes, where are you at on James Robinson's ADP right now? We see that it's sitting here at 74.4. Like, do you think it's going to get lower? Do you think that's about right for where he's going? What do you think about that?
Just that picture you have on your screen there with all those running backs. Those are all the running backs everybody hates.
Right.
So I think it will still go lower. And then I think it'll be a good time to buy him here soon.
Yeah.
I don't hate him right now as your running back 3-4. Preferably running back 4. I like him. But yeah, he's a player like, oh, I might take him this round. Just wait. Just like, no, I'll wait. And then he might be there next round. So he's kind of a fun player, actually.
I'm actually reading the comments here, and I can tell you right now that I'm like, when it comes to these comments, I'm probably going to be like the worst person with this, because I'm trying to focus on like the combo and drafting, and then also comments. Maybe I can get someone to do this for me. But we do have a couple comments in here. I'll read a few in a second, but I do appreciate you all commenting on here.
They're probably making fun of the room I'm drafting in here. My 5-year-old daughter's room, nice rainbow background, stripes on the wall, some purses hanging. So that's the way I do it. That's why I like best ball. 4 kids, so got to get my drafts in, right?
Exactly. So I just went James Robinson here because I do like him, because I do think that there's a chance he could be good. Someone also pointed out in the chat that Urban Meyer could possibly be using Etienne as a wide receiver, which is just a rumor that came out in camp, in mini camp earlier today. If that's the case, maybe James Robinson does have some value that we may have thought that he lost early on. But I do appreciate the comments. Everybody, certainly keep them coming. Tweet out the live stream if you're on here, if you're checking it out. Love to get more viewers on here. But thank you for the comments, Justin, Gridiron Drafts. Happy to have you guys on here. James is coming up with his next pick. Where are you eyeing to go for this one, James?
Dallas Goedert, Devontae Smith are my top 2 in my rankings right now. So, Yeah, I probably rank my Eagles a little too high. I kind of like Brandon Cooks as well. I'm probably the only one out there, but I'm probably going to go Dallas Goedert. So when Ertz leaves, I think Goddard's ADP. I think Goddard has potential, honestly, to just be up there with Waller. I mean, if Kittle's healthy all season, I don't think he'll get that quite that far. But I think Goddard's locked in as a tight end 5 as soon as Ertz is out.
Yeah, I think that could definitely be the case. I think that also when it comes to, just talking about having those spike weeks, I think that playing with Hurts could really end up giving him a little bit of extra boost, just with a young quarterback, perhaps a little bit of an inaccurate quarterback, a mobile quarterback. So targeting those guys who are playing close to the line of scrimmage, if Lamar Jackson and Mark Andrews are any indication, then Hurts and Goddard could definitely be a very viable fantasy combo, a very viable stack, I guess is a correct word to use on a live stream best ball show. A very viable stack in best ball this year. So I don't or I don't hate Goddard. I think Goddard could be a very good pick at his current price.
I do feel like if you want that stack to work, you got to take Hurts pretty early. So it's hard to make that stack work. So I'm gonna do something I never usually do. Is take 2 tight ends by round 8, which is kind of stupid, but kind of like Noah Fant here. I don't like any of the running backs really, actually. Yeah. I'm just gonna go Devontae Smith. So I got autoed on that one, but I'm all right with that.
I mean, that's okay. You are getting that Eagle stack in there. One thing that I think too is interesting, and I haven't done a lot of research, on it, but I do think that we get so accustomed to viewing stacks as quarterback and then position player. There's definitely ways that you can also, have very strong stacks without having to worry about stacking position players with the quarterback. If you're looking to possibly stack players in a receiving game, you can't get that quarterback. I don't think you should be talked off of these other quarterbacks off these other players simply because you did not get the quarterback you were hoping to land. I'm going to go Michael Carter right here. I think that there's a chance that he could be the lead back for the Jets sooner rather than later. And after going Alvin Kamara and then not drafting a running back for the next 5-6 picks after that, I think going with Michael Carter after James Robinson will hopefully be an okay strategy here. I wanted Matthew Stafford to pair with Cooper Kupp, but I'm going to wait on that. But the Rams offense is not an offense I'm afraid to draft right now. Is there any offenses and teams in particular who you are trying to stack with your builds, James, when it comes to either maybe they're higher priced, maybe they're properly priced, or maybe they're just a really low price stack that you think can end up hitting later on in the season? Is there any stacks that you're really trying to hammer out when you're looking to do your builds, particularly in these tournaments?
Honestly, I don't even think about stacking. So
really,
kind of once we get to around 10 or 11, then I'll start thinking about it. But you just have to pay such a high price for some of those big quarterbacks and with their top receivers. And I don't know. I think a lot of people are just going for that angle. So I'm all right getting a Sam Darnold to DJ Moore stack, and I feel great about that one. I don't have to pay a price for it.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. Even some of these quarterbacks, while they're maybe not necessarily the worst price for their ADP, and you can see them producing, the benefit of best ball is obviously being able to. I'm going to take Jalen Waddle here. The benefit of best ball is obviously not having to make the start-sit decisions on your own. You're all automatically going to get the highest scoring players at each position. So when you are getting your quarterbacks, having maybe 2 or 3 on there, if you're getting them at the right cost, maybe going 3 because you faded the position early can definitely give you a chance to really benefit from where you took these players, realizing that they still are probably going to have some week 1 upside for you, and you only need 1. Which kind of even goes back to what James was talking about with his four quarterback builds, just getting them cheap and hoping to hit on something.
Oh man, see, I was going to take Zach Moss last round, and here he is for me. So, the running back 3, love that.
Yeah, Moss is a pretty good value right now. I think that when it comes to just talking about the Bills running backs as a whole, like again, it's a position that they didn't address in the draft. Obviously, I think that people are somewhat concerned about just how high of a pass volume their team has, but when it comes down to it, like you really can't make a solid argument that Devin Singletary is a great player. I'm not sure that you can necessarily make that argument for Moss either, but he did have some productive games last season. He had some games where he definitely early on he was looking good, and then he got, if I remember correctly, he suffered an injury which kind of cost him a few weeks. But Moss is a player who I do like at his current ADP.
I'm going to go another running back. So I think the running backs kind of die up a little bit. I think James Conner is a little bit too low right now. I think Chase Edmonds is great. I love him. I have him ranked a lot higher than Conner. I think that Conner was dinged up last year. Conner did not look good last year, and that's why his ADP right now is 103.8. But as far as putting in as your running back 4, he plays on an amazing offense that moves the ball, and he's going to have opportunities. So I kind of like that. There's some other receivers I really like too at that point. So now I'm going to have to wait. So probably all my guys will be gone now next time it rolls around.
I mean, that's certainly possible. I'm going to go ahead and grab my first quarterback here. I'm going to take Trevor Lawrence. I got DJ Shark already on my team, so I like that pairing. I got James Robinson too, so I got a little bit of Jacksonville action going on here. I got a question in the chat. It's from Justin. It says, if you're not getting stacks, do you get more value for trying to get a more running quarterback? I think what he's asking is a running quarterback something that we want to be looking for if we're not getting stacks. And I mean, I kind of think, and James, you can certainly give your side of this here, but looking for running quarterbacks at any spot in the draft definitely adds a little bit of value to their game. Obviously, there's a lot of work out there on just Konami code quarterbacks. Hat tip to Rich Rebar, who kind of coined that phrase and really was a trailblazer on that. But there are going to be those running quarterbacks you can get late who may add that upside to your team when building. Obviously you don't have to stack to get that. I think a guy like Justin Fields could do that. Lamar Jackson is a rookie. He was doing that with his ADP then, and he was doing it with his ADP in his second season when he was going like the 8th or 9th round of drafts. So I definitely like getting the running quarterbacks. What do you think about adding running quarterbacks to kind of boost your team a little bit, James?
Oh, for sure. They used to be the cheat code, right? But everyone's kind of caught on to it. So and ADP reflects like you have to pay a price to get them. But yeah, 100% agree. So the late quarterbacks that give you that, I mean, probably at this point, your Tannehill has a little bit of rushing upside. Trey Lance, maybe Tua, even Daniel Jones. People, I mean, you remember that long run he hit against the Eagles and he fell down? That was pretty good.
Yeah, I'm sure you like that play in particular. I think the one, honestly, if you really want to talk about the Konami code quarterback who's going to probably be a much bigger value than what people are talking about right now, I think it's got to be Justin Fields. I know the Bears are kind of gross, and I know that there's not a lot to, and obviously he goes right there as I mentioned him. I was probably eyeing him up. Maybe I kind of showed my hand there, but regardless. Justin Fields, like I just can't see a world where Andy Dalton is actually starting even half of the season for the Bears. Like I know they posted that tweet. They called him QB1. They were trying to be supportive, and that's really great and everything. But like I just think Justin Fields is gonna like blow them away in training camp. I think they're gonna be talking behind the scenes about whether or not they should even be starting him in week 1. And then if they choose to not start him in week 1, I think there's a chance that Justin Fields is just going to be the starter soon afterwards. Do you think Justin Fields is just a ridiculous value right now, James, or am I a little bit off on that?
No, he has to be starting, right? But you're probably gonna take a 0 for the first few weeks, so that's one thing. But in this tournament, like those are the type of players you want to take on the backside of the draft. You want to take players that are gonna have strong finishes to the season. They're gonna put up a lot of points for you. He's definitely in that category.
Yeah.
As far as he has the rushing, he has the deep pass, everything, and he's got players around him too. So there's talent in Chicago. It's just they haven't had somebody in place to kind of to give them that output.
Yeah. No, I really do think that Justin Fields is just going to be a tremendous player, for fantasy purposes this year. And like James said, he's on the clock right now. We'll take a look and see who he picks here. He went with Henry Ruggs. We can cover that in a second here. But I think that even if Fields is taking a little bit of a hit for you early on, what he is going to do is he's going to be on your roster as a QB2, maybe even a QB3, depending on when you're taking your quarterbacks. And taking a zero those couple of weeks isn't going to hurt you. But then when he's putting up those 25, 30-point games for you later on down the road, that's when you really start to see the value hit. James, where are you at on Henry Ruggs? I noticed that you took him. He's not personally a player who I'm that wild about. But how do you view him coming into 2021?
I don't know if it was pre-show. We're talking about the Raiders, and kind of people hate the Raiders, so that they're on their do not draft list. I feel like Ruggs is one of those players. So many issues last year. There was also a couple of games that he showed some glimpses of being something. If he can stay healthy, I just think he's a great value. And to be honest, I took him as my wide receiver 7. So I don't think you can get a better wide receiver 7. But I've also sacrificed my quarterback position right now, so I don't have a quarterback yet. So that's the angle I was talking about. Taking all those quarterbacks later, you can kind of make up on the other positions a little bit, and then you try to maybe you go 3 quarterbacks. So you're trying to hit like 20, 25, and hopefully hit a ceiling on a quarterback of 30 points in a game each week with the 3. But I mean, most people are taking Kyler Murray, and I don't know who else, another quarterback, and just going with 2. Obviously, they have better quarterbacks than you, but if you have 3 quarterbacks, you have a little better chance to score high with one of those 3. So
and that's why James mentioned some of the different things that we talk about at RotoViz. Let me talk about getting my pick in here real quick, and then I can talk about what we talk about at RotoViz.
What's your team looking like at the top?
I'll
make your pick here.
I'm not too sure here. Let me take Terrace Marshall here. No, but some of the things we talk about at RotoViz real quick, we do talk about just, the importance of not taking quarterback too early. Oftentimes it's a mistake that people make. They think because they're getting the best quarterback that it's also the best pick. You have to also consider just the players and the other positions that you're passing up on to get a quarterback at the onesie position. So doing quarterback early, there's a way to do it, and not a lot of people do it correctly. And even if they do it correctly, it may not necessarily work out quite the way they want it to. As far as my team goes, right now I'm looking at Trevor Lawrence and Tua Tagovailoa. I've got running backs Alvin Kamara, James Robinson, Michael Carter, Kenyon Drake. I've got wide receivers Michael Thomas, DJ Moore, Cooper Kupp, DJ Shark, Jalen Waddle, Terrace Marshall, who I just selected with my last pick, and then at tight end I have George Kittle. So if you want to talk about cheap stacks, ways to kind of build, I'm at least trying to set myself up a little bit for that. But I'm also getting players who I like, particularly at wide receiver. I think there's a lot of players who I'm really into here. We can take a look at James's team in a second if I can find it. You know what? I don't think I can find it at the moment. Actually, I can here. You know what? James is working with Ezekiel Elliott, Stephon Diggs, J.K. Dobbins, Terry McLaurin, Brandon Ayuk, Deontay Johnson, Dallas Goedert, Devonta Smith, Zach Moss, James Conner, Darnell Mooney, Henry Ruggs, and he just selected Baker Mayfield. He's going to be on the clock here again in just a second. So he does finally have his first quarterback. Are you looking to get another quarterback here now, or where do you leaning towards?
So the way I'm looking at it, quarterbacks are falling, so I'll probably take another one. Yeah. So, I mean, I have nobody to stack with. Most of my players. So I was looking at Fitzpatrick. There, somebody grabbed him, and honestly, I hate taking Fitzpatrick. I get that. I love watching the guy. I think I don't know. So I'm gonna go with Homer pick. Go with Wentz because
There you go.
I mean, he's fallen. Baker's fallen. Those are the quarterbacks no one likes to take. Nobody wants to take those guys, and it's like I'll take 3 or 4 of them, and yeah, we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, this is probably one.
I mean,
of the
I probably should have went
with. I've probably gone quarterback a little bit later here than I normally do. I mean, my first quarterback was in round 10. Usually, I'm probably getting a quarterback in rounds 8 or 9 at the earliest. So I did drop back a little bit in taking quarterbacks. I definitely don't have a lot of Tua, who I think is an interesting pick. But a guy who I think is more of just a question mark. I don't necessarily think Tua is a bad pick or a good pick. I think he's a guy that, he could have upside with the weapons that they've put around him. Right here, if I can get out of this draft board, I need to act quickly here. I'm going to go with Jameis Winston. I'm going to go with 3 quarterback build here because I'm only going to be taking two tight ends now that I've got now that I've got Kittle on this team. So I'm going 3 quarterbacks just to kind of hopefully help cover myself. Also, I've got Jameis now with Alvin Kamara and Michael Thomas, so I don't hate that.
No, you did a great job of stacking there. See, and you didn't have to pay a crazy price for any of those stacks. So I like that.
Yeah, it's a no-brainer. It's a no-brainer stack. When it comes to realizing the upside with it, and it doesn't cost you anything. Like if you really believe that Michael Thomas is undervalued, if you think Kamara is going to once again be, worth the pick, and then obviously Winston, you're just hoping is a starter. Like you're kind of setting yourself up well for some success there. Justin hit us with another question in the chat. Let me see. Am I up here? Let me make my pick, and then I'll get to that question. Because it does tend to vary a little bit, kind of the way James described, with the way he views his picks as well. Let me see here. So the guy who's gone is who I didn't want to be gone, which is Troutman. But we'll be okay. Yeah. We'll be okay. I'm going to go ahead and pick another quarterback here. I'm going to go with Jared Cook. This is probably a little bit earlier than what his ADP is, but I think he has a chance to be a good tight end in the Chargers offense. So I like him as my tight end too. I'm only taking 2. I think Cook can definitely squeeze in some tight end 1 weeks and possibly even have a couple of weeks where he's making up for maybe a bad Kittle week. But Justin asked, he pointed out that James's preferred build when it comes to building is 3 quarterbacks, 6 running backs, 7 wide receiver, 2 tight end. He wanted to know what my preferred build was. I would say that I tend to echo that. Maybe if I'm drafting running backs a little bit sooner and higher, I may pivot down to like 5 running backs or the hyper fragile build of 4, and then go with more wide receivers. And then for tight end, if I'm getting one of those elite guys like Kelsey, Kittle, and Waller, I'll usually try to go with just a 2 tight end build. If that's not the case, then maybe I'll go with 3 just because I feel like I need to have a little bit more coverage there. And then usually my quarterbacks, the number of quarterbacks I pick is kind of dependent on the number of tight ends I pick more often than not. Usually I have 3 at one and 2 at the other, and it just kind of depends for me how early I'm taking one, where I might take the other, which I think is kind of what James said he does as well.
Yeah. So in these tournaments, I prefer 5 running backs. That's kind of where I sit with the running backs. I like to take a 2 or 3 earlier, then 2 in the mid range, and then a flyer at the end. That's kind of how I do it. So right now, I'm looking at tight end, but I'm going to go with 1 more receiver just because I can't help myself.
Yeah.
Going with Valdez-Scantling. Just I like the best ball boom weeks that he can have, and I mean he could start for me 3 or 4 weeks even as my wide receiver 8. He could start in the flex or receiver spot. I was going to go tight end there, but I had a bunch of tight ends that I like later in the draft. So.
Yeah, I mean and you're probably setting up for. I mean, what you only have 1 tight end right now, right? You have 2. No, you don't. I'm sorry. I picked the wrong one here.
Yeah, if you ever see me draft 3 tight ends, you can hit me up on Twitter and just make fun of me as much as you want because
Let you know your kids got your phone.
Yeah, I will never draft 3 tight ends.
All right, running back here. Gosh, I think these running back options are so gross. I'm almost tempted to just keep on fading them and just take a 5th one later on, kind of like you said. Not that I love these wide receivers either, but my word, like this is good. I'm taking AJ Green, and I don't even like it. But maybe if Cliff Kingsbury really thinks that he can somehow get him to the fountain of youth and make him a decent receiver again, maybe the pick ends up all right. I really don't love the AJ Green pick. That's more of a pick where I'm hoping that the coaching staff has enough conviction to actually just target him, and hopefully he plays better than he did last season. But these
these are the round 15 on. This is why you want to have rankings, because I feel like the ADP in these rounds is all kind of jumbled together, and it's hard to. If you don't have rankings, you're just following ADP. You're not going to find guys that you feel good about. So you're going to get the AJ Greens, but there could be other receivers that you prefer, but you got 30 seconds to make the call, so it makes it tough.
I agree with you. This is definitely kind of making me wish that I had my own rankings right now, but maybe this is something that I dabble with a little bit. You know, we do this show to learn a thing or two. I think James makes a really good point about the importance of rankings, which is personally something that I've not done. It's more of just my opinion on players. I am going to take Kenny Gainwell here. I debated taking him last round. I do not care about Kerryon Johnson. I don't care that he's on the team. I don't think it really matters that much. At least I hope it doesn't. And if Miles Sanders ends up going busto, or if Miles Sanders ends up getting injured, I can definitely see a world where where Kenny Gainwell is, the lead back for the Eagles. Do you have any insight on that as an Eagles fan, James? Do you think that that's a correct take?
I mean, I was kind of surprised they took a running back, but also as the 5th round, and he kind of fell. Like he was on a lot of people's top 5 rookie running backs. So I think there was a lot of value right there. So I mean, I like it, especially this format later in the season. Miles Sanders struggled to catch passes out of the backfield, but hopefully that was more of a Carson Wentz issue. So,
there were some replays I know floating around Twitter that was just, and obviously you can always make a player look just absolutely awful whenever you splice together your own videos and highlights of them just sucking. But I do remember there were some videos of Wentz just having brutal misses of the running backs on behind the line of scrimmage pass attempts, or just past the line of scrimmage. There was a couple really bad ones there. But I think that Sanders could be decent, and I think that the running backs could definitely kind of be an undervalued position for the Eagles if Sanders and to a degree Gainwell both hit, and if that offense is able to get going. I'm just not sure how confident I am in the Eagles offense as a whole.
Yeah, I mean, if you're not confident in them, that probably means by the second half of the season, Gainwell's going to be in there.
Yeah, that's when you start testing out guys to see who you want to maybe go for with the following year.
So here, this is my last pick. It's going to be running back. So I really like Darrington Evans, Tennessee.
Yeah.
So I think if Tennessee falls off, he's going to be kind of that player we just talked about, the running back comes in. I also like Ahmed on Miami. I also like Joshua Kelly. Like those are some of my mix and match late round guys.
Yeah.
So.
Yep. No, I've been adding some Darrington Evans as well. I think that he is. I think that he is one of the players that you can look at on the roster and you can say he is probably as legit of a quote unquote league winner as you can get in fantasy drafts. And to get him at the last round, more often than not, is certainly a tremendous value. My last pick here is going to be a wide receiver, and around these spots are usually where I'm just trying to take a guy who I think has, a little bit of upside if things break right for him. James Washington is a guy I've been looking at a lot. Also Scott Miller, even though I know they resigned Antonio Brown. And then even like someone like Byron Pringle or Cornell Powell, I think is interesting just because of the offenses that they play in. So I'm going to go with James Washington and just hope that maybe something breaks right for him, where Big Ben is finding him. Maybe something happens where he is slotted into a role where he's able to have a couple of decent weeks. He wasn't awful to start the season, but he definitely tailed off as Chase Claypool became more of a thing. So
he was one of my highest owned players before free agency. And then they signed Juju. Yeah, it all went downhill.
Yeah.
If they didn't sign Juju, I bet you he'd be going in round 10 to 12 if they didn't sign Juju right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think James Washington's a decent player. If I'm not mistaken, I believe there's a little bit of a James Washington and Ben Roethlisberger being like best friends on the team narrative, or at the very least, Roethlisberger believes in him and has tried to hype him up a little bit. And I think getting a little bit more playing time. It obviously hasn't worked out quite how he wanted it to, but I do like I do like James Robinson. I think he's a decent player. I was drafting him a bit last year. Let's go look at these teams real quick. Best Ball Mania 2. Is this the team I just drafted? No, it is not. It's this one here. Justin Wallace did ask, what? No Tim Tebow with Trevor Lawrence? Come on, Zach. LOL. Yeah, I know. I didn't draft Tebow. I probably should have, but nepotism doesn't exist on this team. I don't care. I don't care what he's done for me in the past. I won't be drafting Tim Tebow as a tight end. Real quick, here's my team, then I'll pull up James's team so we can kind of go over these things. So I went with a 3 quarterback build, 2 tight ends, 5 running backs, and then I went with 8 wide receivers. So I got Trevor Lawrence, Tua Tagovailoa, Jameis Winston as my quarterbacks, Alvin Kamara, James Robinson, Michael Carter, Kenyon Drake, and Kenny Gainwell at running backs. I like that. I like Gainwell. Like I said, maybe a potential league winner. Got him almost 10 spots past ADP, so I'll take that little bit of a discount. Michael Thomas, DJ Moore, Cooper Kupp, my wide receivers, along with DJ Shark, Jalen Waddle, Terrace Marshall Jr., AJ Green, James Washington. AJ Green was a lesson for me and the importance of rankings in these later rounds. I thought that James made a really good point there. So maybe I'll be doing some rankings when we get off this call here in a little bit. And then my tight ends, I went with Kittle early, so I only felt the need to go with 2. I went with George Kittle and Jared Cook. James, does this lineup have a shot to at least make second place and get to the playoffs, or am I dead in the water already?
No, I mean, your quarterbacks are better than my quarterbacks, I think, if you want to rank them that way. I mean, you got Kamara. He could be a league winner. He could finish running back 1 on the season. You're going to need a couple of those other running backs to hit. It might not be till later in the season, which that could hurt a little bit. Hopefully you don't fall too far behind. Your wide receivers are great. Yeah, minus AJ Green. I think that's just like I'd rather have James Washington pick than AJ Green. So There's not much upside there. I get, he might have a couple of games where he gets a touchdown, but he also could only catch 3 passes in those games. So he might not even score for you on his good games.
Very, very true.
Jared Cook, I probably would have rather just waited to my last 18th round pick and just take like a Dan Arnold or Dawson Knox or just some guy that can, or even Zach Ertz. Like I don't see much difference when Zach Ertz signs. Like people are going to have Zach Ertz ranked ahead of Jared Cook, I think. So. Yeah, that's actually something that I don't think is being talked about enough yet. Because I think Ertz, everyone's still viewing Ertz as an Eagles tight end, and while that is the case, it's probably not actual reality. So if you choose to draft with a little bit of foresight and anticipate that he's not going to be on the Eagles this year, then Ertz is probably a very solid pick if you're taking him a little bit earlier than ADP. James, let's go over your team here real quick. You went with the 3 quarterback build, 5 running backs, 8 wide receivers, 2 tight ends. You got Baker Mayfield, Carson Wentz, Ben Roethlisberger as your quarterbacks. You have as your running backs Zeke, Dobbins, Zach Moss, James Conner, Darrington Evans, and then for wide receiver, you're just loaded with speed and talent at the top. You got Stephon Diggs, Terry McLaurin, Brandon Ayuk, Deontay Johnson, Devontae Smith, Darnell Mooney, Henry Ruggs, Marquez Valdez-Scantling. And then for tight end, you have Dallas Goedert and Eric Ebron. I will say, just real quick, and then I'll turn it over to you, I think your wide receivers are very solid. And then I think that, like, for those last 3 wide receivers, it's just, like, the prototypical, like, best ball lottery tickets where you're just banking on those, like, huge weeks, those 60, 70-yard touchdowns where all of a sudden one play puts them into the top
36 for you and somehow drops him into your lineup. How do you feel about your build overall and how you came out of this one?
So it's exactly why I kind of wait at the quarterback, is because I want to load up on those wide receivers in this tournament setting.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of like the 3 quarterback build. These are all quarterbacks everyone hates. No one likes Baker. No one likes Carson Wentz. No one likes Roethlisberger. It's based on how they performed at the end of last year. People were higher on Baker to start the year, thought he'd break out. People like Wentz, it was a disaster. And Roethlisberger's really just looked old and slow, and he just had a horrible game against the Browns to finish it off. But all 3 of those quarterbacks, they have decent weapons around them. And there's a chance all 3 of those are going to start 16 games. So I feel like I'm okay there. I get there's no amazing rushing quarterback or great play. Maybe Wentz, though. Wentz has got a few touchdowns on the ground.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, as far as quarterback, I'm all right with it. I like the 3 quarterback build. I would never want just 2 of those quarterbacks and go with that. So I like the 3. Running back, I think these are, again, I'm going by people, how they're viewing last year. So Zeke, he has a bad rep. Just Cowboys. Yeah, I mean, you think of the Cowboys, you think of Andy Dalton and just them NFC East just being awful, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think the Cowboys are going to be back. The offense is going to be great, and Zeke's making a ton of money, so he's going to play. He's going to get 20 touches every single game. I don't doubt it. Dobbins, I think there's a little bit of upside. People are letting him fall to the 3rd round. They're kind of worried. Gus Edwards, I love Gus Edwards. I take him a lot. He's one of my highest owned. But the Ravens, they don't have a great passing game. We know that. And Dobbins, I mean, he's going to get work on the ground. Ravens like to run the ball. They play in that division that they want to pound it. They want to rely on their defense. So a running back 2 can't beat that. It kind of is a little bit upside there with Dobbins, maybe, and maybe it kind of makes up for Elliott, like the uncertainties, maybe a little bit. Zach Moss is he's kind of just my value there around his ADP, where people are taking the Gaskins and the Chase Edmonds and those type of running backs. I get they're probably going to finish better at the end of the season, but it could be close. So I like the value in Moss. James Conner, I think they remember him just like Roethlisberger. He was awful. Steelers' offense wasn't great with him. Also, Chase Edmonds has never had over 100 rushing attempts in a season, so they brought Conner there for a reason. So I think running back 4, don't hate it. Mm-hmm. Darrington Evans is just, I'm not expecting him to score probably till the second half of the season, but he's that guy just in case. I mean, if he does, Henry goes down, there's nobody on that depth chart behind. So I'm taking a chance on there.
He's a good lottery ticket.
Yeah. And last year, people took him a lot. And he was one of my higher owned flyers. And he was awful.
I think was he injured for most of the season last year? I can't completely remember, but I think that the combination of COVID season plus injuries kind of just put Darrington Evans in a bad position for 2020 as a rookie.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
So, and then we get down to my receivers, and this is where, it would be nice to have stacks, with Diggs, with McLaurin, with Ayuk, so I did get one stack. So I have the Pittsburgh Deontay Johnson and Eric Ebron with Ben. So at least if I get through to that second round, I got one stack to. So
it could be very helpful. It could be all you need.
Yeah, I don't hate it. And then just my last 4 receivers, I think they all have upside for touchdowns, upside for lots of big plays. So don't hate that. Goddard at tight end. Like I said, I really feel like he could finish. I think he's kind of locked in as a tight end 5. But he could also get into that tight end 3 range. So I like the upside there. I think his value, and Hawkinson's another one. I think those tight ends, they're going to hit. They're going to be in that range.
Hawkinson could lead the team in targets this year.
Everyone's
talking about it, but I don't think that they're weighing just the magnitude of that quite enough. I think Hawkinson could be very good. I'm sorry. And then you were just going to say something on Eric Ebron?
He's just a touchdown guy, right? And as far as So the one thing I'll say about tight ends, people they get excited. Oh, tight ends, they can start in my flex. They never start in your flex. They either they're gonna have a decent game or they're gonna get you maybe 4 fantasy points. So don't count on your tight ends, especially your tight end 2, to start in your flex. Just take somebody that has potential to get a touchdown any week. And then just to sum it up, I don't know. I don't think this is a unique team. I don't think it's a team that's if I make it week 17, I'm going to be so different and unique and win the thing. But it's more, hey, this is a great team to finish top 2 and to get to round 2 and then see what happens. If I get to the finals and Evans, no one else has Evans or no one else has a combination of 3 of those receivers. It's not just about one player. It could be a combination of 3 of those receivers being the highest scoring receivers on that week. So there's a lot that goes into it.
Yeah, you aside from the draft, you definitely need a lot to go right in terms of obviously player health, but then also the games that they're getting in the playoffs for this tournament, and you need them to be in the games that go well. If I'm not mistaken, I want to say it was on an Established to Run podcast. They were talking about just the value of tracking even towards like that final week, maybe final 2 weeks of the season for best ball tournaments, maybe even drafting based on schedule a little bit, what we know about that, and trying to draft players based on possibly what you think may be a high scoring game. Like I know, I believe Herzig had mentioned Chiefs and Falcons last year, which is obviously a game that could have, been a potential shootout. So you draft just based on that with the idea that maybe your team will make the tournament, go far, and now you're loaded up on players for that final game, which I think is a really sneaky way to go about it. Obviously, you don't want to sacrifice too much draft capital and things like that to make that happen. But if you can jam it in and make it fit, like why not? Like it can't hurt. But yeah. So anything else you want to add, James?
No, it was great. Thanks for having me. It's always fun to do a draft. Anybody on Twitter, if you guys ever want to do a draft, just hit me up on Twitter, and I'd love to draft anytime, any format, mainly just Underdog, but any format on Underdog. So I really enjoy it. So.
For sure. Well, thanks again, James, for coming on. Again, then you can find him on Twitter at James Brimacombe. At James Brimacombe. You can also find his rankings and other works over at FootballGuys.com, and you can definitely find him in the best ball lobbies anytime between now and the start of the season. He will be around. So definitely keep an eye out for him. Drop him some drafts. He'll always jump in if you can. I know I've personally sent him a lot. We've done a lot of drafts together. So thanks again, James, for coming on. I appreciate it. Thank you, everybody else, for tuning in. If you have not been on Underdog Fantasy yet, or you're looking to possibly give it a try, you can check out the link in the show description on YouTube or on my Twitter account. You can use promo code CRUISE when you sign up. Come on over and draft with us, and we will see you all next week on episode 4 of Roster Locked. But for this one, we're going to say goodbye. So thanks everyone for coming out.